Hi, I'm working on the Type 4 light Japanese the tank, the Kinyu, and I want to do this video a little differently. So I'm going to do some video, some slides in between. I want to start with step 1 here real quick. In step 1, you have the machine gun. And the machine gun offers you an option here as to what cover plate you use. Now, in the drawing, you can see that there looks to be a switch on top of it. One facing right, one's facing left. What they don't tell you is that one is the open position, number B23, and one is the closed position, B22. You really have to kind of look at it hard to determine that the B23, you'll notice the little hole lines up with the sight on the inside, and so if you want it so that the gunner might be able to use it, you have to use 23. If you want it in the closed position, secured, you use the B22 piece. Also, it doesn't tell you this, but you're really not supposed to glue any of these things into position other than the cap on the end of the gun barrel. Otherwise, it doesn't allow it to move. You have to grab this part, which is a step further in, and install it in order not to lose all the pieces, at least in my case. You have to, and even still, you have to be very careful with the amount of glue you put on either side of this so that it doesn't bleed over and catch the pivot points. I knew it was a small tank, a light tank, but I had no idea just how small it is. I actually believe it's littler than the PZ2. The detail on it, though, is just absolutely stunning. Okay, step 2. Step 2 is the back of the vehicle. You have a bunch of options. I went for the replacement of the little piece in the back for the PE. I did not go for the option here where you have a choice for the PE or the plastic piece. The detailing on the plastic piece is just so much more crisp than the plain PE piece, so I have to forego that. Now, there is a bit of a question. The adjusters for the return roller looks to be adjustable. It says to use crazy glue to hold it all together. I built mine so it does slide back and forth, I guess, so you can take the slack out of or put enough slack into the tracks. But it is a bit confusing. I mean, it appears to be, but they're not real clear about it. I went ahead and crazy glued mine together and, like I said, built it so it is adjustable. Also, you have the option for the tow cables or not, and that's kind of interesting. I like that, but I opted for the tow cables. I like the tow cables. Alrighty, steps 4, 5, and 6 here. Again, I took some of the options that were available. I replaced, or I did not use the single piece that had all of this molded on, because I wanted the little PE hatchway or inspection hatch to be able to be left open a little bit. I chose this particular hatch because it came with a 2-piece handle instead of molded on one, and it looks oh so much better than the molded on one. I opted for or opted to have this hatch open, although there's nothing going to be seen inside. I'll paint it black just because it's got all this beautiful PE for it, and this way I can expose at least a little of it while once it's been built. Now, step 4. Step 4, they want you to put on all the road wheels and bogies and so on and so forth, and I'm not going to do that. I do all my painting before I put the wheels on. But there is a curious footnote here. The arrow for the drive sprocket directs you to putting it right there on the bogie wheel. I mean, right next to the, instead of up here where it belongs, they for some reason drew the arrow over to the arm that holds the bogie wheel on. Typical Dragon stuff, I guess. Okay, a few more choices in 7 to make. You have the option on these wonderful little PE parts to either use the 3 individual pieces up here or try to scrape those off and use the PE replacements, whole single replacements. Tell you the truth, they looked about the same when it come to detail, so I just opted to put the 3 little pieces on rather than try to clear off enough of the plastic without damaging it. PE part there is looks nice, has the little mud guards inside. Another choice here, you had 2 choices of doors. Again, you had the 2-part door, which I opted for because the detail on the little handles is wonderful, or you could have the molded on handles. Another option that they have here are the headlights. One faces forward and the other backwards. I don't know why. It's a 2-part piece with the front part being the clear off the clear sprue, and then the back on the regular color sprue. Wonderful little parts. I suspect there is a need to have them facing backwards in combat or blackout conditions, but I opted for I'll have mine facing forwards. The reason they're over there at the moment is the micro set is solving, or micro mask is drying. I want to put that, I'll need to paint it, and it's just easier than trying to mask it off later, just to take care of it now. Okay, scratch building log 1.0. I decided to leave this little hatch open, and I painted inside black, but you can definitely see that there's nothing in there. My solution is I built a small pseudo engine block. You'll be able to see the top of the head, some what looks like plumbing. I'll paint it up, black to cover the back and the side. This side will be off-white as well, the bottom, because you can see it. I'll probably do the engine in maybe a couple shades of green, dark green, and chip it a little bit. Maybe put some wash around it just to dirty it up a little bit, give it some interest. Just always something, isn't it? Okay, I don't know if the camera will pick much of it up, if any, but the engine has been popped into place, and it looks a lot better now. If you look at it, you can see into it that there's something in there. Definitely would have been, well, crap without it. Okay, 9 and 10 has some more choices. You have the possibility to have this commander's, I guess, periscope open or closed. I chose open. There are a bunch of choices here. I've jumped ahead a little bit in some of this, in that, again, you have a choice on what here ball to choose. One has an opening open for the gunner sight, and the other doesn't. And again, you kind of have to, it shows you putting it together here, but unless you actually glue it in place, all these pieces are loose. and you lose them, they fall apart. It doesn't seem to make sense to have these pieces or this assembly done at this point and then have to go way back here to find the point where you attach them all. And while I was back there, I found out that all these pieces need to go in as well. And again, you have open or closed. Again, I opted to have all of these pieces open so that there's nothing to see, but I like the fact that they're open. This is up through step 17. The turret is now, complete. I marvel at the diminutive size of this thing. It's a 35th scale model. It's the same scale as the STRV 103 I just finished, but the commander's hatch on that is bigger than the whole turret on this. It's amazing. The detail on it is incredible. Even the slide molded barrel is rifled. It's just phenomenal. This is probably one of the most well developed kits I've ever built. Okay, last little bits are put on before painting. The Pioneer tools will be painted off and put on afterwards, as will the wheels and tracks. The whole thing is pretty much so assembled. Went together really quickly. Real surprised how well it went together. The directions were pretty spot on for a change when it comes to Dragon. Normally I have a lot of issues with Dragon instructions. Perhaps it's the really exceptionally large amount of issues I had with the Hobby Boss directions that made this seem better. I don't know, but no problem whatsoever with it. There will be some other items put on last. The jack, for one. Now with the jack, it's normally a butt joint on the end of the, according to the directions. They want you to just use a butt joint which has it sticking out about half again as far and a very small glue point. The drawings show it completely closed. I opted to have it a little open. What I did was I drilled out a hole long enough that I could insert the end of the ratcheting geared end of the extension arm out to give myself a little bit more structure for gluing purposes. But that will be painted up separately and put on along with the Pioneer tools. And the last bit of PE will be folded over on this, but I need to do a lot of, this is the muffler. I want to do some weathering, some rusting and effects on that before I put the PE over the top of it. And that's about it for the moment. First coat of paint's on. I'm liking the way it turned out. I do have a confession. I didn't have the appropriate IJA green that it called for, so I had to wait and order some. And I got the Mr. Color IJA green. It's a lacquer, and I've never used lacquers before. I didn't realize that's what I was buying when I ordered it. I just assumed that it was going to be the standard acrylic Vallejo type paint that I normally use. First impressions, smells really bad. Second impression is, well, you gotta thin it with lacquer thinner, and I didn't have any, so I experimented with some of the stuff I did have and found that most things didn't work that I had on hand. Alcohol did seem to work fine. The little sample piece that I tested it on, alcohol did give a nice smooth finish. It leveled itself out. The straight paint, you could see brush marks in it. The other stuff that I tried, the thinners that I tried, didn't work at all. Alcohol did seem to work, and it cleaned out the equipment all right. Wasn't totally happy with it. So I went to Home Depot and purchased a can of just straight cheap lacquer thinner, and lo and behold, it worked beautifully. So I thinned it with the lacquer thinner that I got from Home Depot, and shot it, and this is the end results. Laid out nice and smooth, no runs, went through the airbrush without a problem. Everything turned out really well. I'm going to give it a couple days though to dry completely or harden, whatever lacquer does, before I start doing the secondary colors and working on the camouflage. Alrighty, the all colors are on. I followed the paint guide as best I can or could. I had to do a little research to find out some of the colors and what could be mixed to make the right shades and so on and so forth. And it only gives you 3 sides as opposed to, you know, all 4 sides of the top. So there's a little poetic license in there when it comes to the actual pattern. But I try to be as close to the diagram as possible. Now this just has the satin finish on it at the moment, and once that dries I'll go ahead and use the weathering, or do the weathering to it. And I want to try a couple new techniques that I've run across on the internet lately. Now when it comes to finishes and paints and so on and so forth, and I might get scoffed at a little bit for this, but I'm kind of a cheap devil, and I like to use the stuff I can get on hand, as opposed to now I'm not against using the name brand stuff. I like using the inexpensive stuff. I find it's a good deal, especially when you have to buy a lot of it. All these products are readily available at the local hobby and craft store, and they do an outstanding job. I really do like them a lot. Now that's not to say I don't use the specific model products. I have Vallejo, I have Tamiya. Really, actually, I really love this clear stuff. I mean, it's amazing how well it works. I use AK Interactive for products as well, and even got one little bottle of Mr. Hobby, or Mr. Color lacquer. So which do I like better? Which do I think work better? I like them all. They all do the job that they're designed to do. They produce nice finishes. This is all the paints you see here, with the exception of the Tamiya, which will be going on in a little bit, or products, have been used or will be used on this right now. The black is the craft paint from Walmart. The green is the Mr. Color. The brown is the Vallejo, as is the custom mix for the light color, also Vallejo. But the finish is Krylon from Walmart, and they thin the lacquer, which I've never used before. Home Depot, $7 for this. It's a quart, for crying out loud. I've only used a few drops, so this will probably last me my lifetime. Did it work as well as the others? I don't know. I've never tried the others. Did it work? It worked beautifully. Would I recommend this over the others? Sure, why not? I mean, it works. Works beautifully, and like I said, I think it was $7 or $7.99 for a quart, and they want like $12 or $13 for, you know, a little bottle of the stuff. Maybe not even that big. So it's a hobby that you need to be flexible with. Okay, I'm still working on it. I got a lot to do yet. More weathering, more painting, more this, more that. But this is just a short interlude. I mentioned that this thing was small. I want to show you part of my next build in comparison to this. Just for the ability to show you just how small. This, as many of you may know or already, is the lower half of a Schwimmwagen. This thing seats 4. It's almost as big as the tank. Alrighty, another one's done. This is the, I'm going to call it the Kennu. It's KE/NU, Japanese light tank of World War II by Dragon. It was a lot of fun. Went together really well. The detail is fantastic. Everything's crisp molded. I mean, just no flash. It was just everything super on it. I did have a couple problems with it, or issues, I should say. I guess mostly my own doing. First off, let me say that I don't know if the Dragon instructions have gotten better, or I've just gotten more used to dealing with them. But I didn't have a problem with the directions on it. The only real issue I had was, and again, my own making, was this hatch. I wanted it partially open to show the detail that the kit came with underneath. It has a PE grate and a little arm bracket that looks, kind of interesting. So I wanted it propped open, and I did. And then I painted the inside black, but you could definitely see it was just empty and painted black, and it just kind of irritated me. So what I did was I built a partial engine. And I'm sure it's not anywhere correct in design or shape or anything like that, but it just gives some visual interest. When you look inside there now, you can see the valve heads and some plumbing to, imply that there's an engine and transmission back there. The whole lower half of the hull was empty. I mean, just blank. But there was an incredible amount of detail on the inside of the turret, which, although I assembled, I didn't bother to paint because it's just going on a shelf to stay like this. There's no decals on it because the kit came with only decals for one version, and that's not the paint job I chose. This is just I don't know if they didn't mark their tanks or they didn't just chose not to. They didn't have any photos of them or whatever, but they had 2 versions of the paint job. One had the bright orange or bright yellow stripe down it that I see a lot of people build, and I just didn't want to build that. So I went with the second version, which had no decals on it at all. The paints are all Vallejo for the most part. There was a Mr. Color paint that I had to order and wait for, which is the IJA green. base color. Given it was a lacquer, I've never tried lacquers before, it went down smooth, and I had no problem with the other paints laying on top of them. And there were no bad interactions between the paints or the clear coats in between. And overall, I'm very happy with the way it turned out. The tracks were the I guess they call them DS. I'm not real positive about that, but with a little bit of glue and some wedging, they got a nice sag to them. They look well. Did try a new product also on this one inside the Mr. Color paint, was the Tamiya Smoke. I've seen it used, a lot of people use it for a lot of different things. The headlights were clear on this, and I liquid masked them over to prevent them from getting the green paint and primer on. And when I took them off, all you could see was the clear plastic through and the gray plastic behind it, and it didn't look very realistic to me. So I put a very thin drop of the smoke on each one of the headlight lenses, and it pooled black around the edge like a rubber seal might, and it gave just a slight discoloration to the plastic, still leaving it clear enough that it looks like headlights, but not that stark plastic look that you could see through the clear piece. Really interesting little detail about this: the barrel is slide molded and it actually is rifled. So I mean, these guys did a really awesome job on this kit. And that's about it. Thanks for watching.